Hi everybody, it's Astra, also known as Roadblock. I am now off the trail. I am not going on the trail. I have quit my AT through hike for 2026. I made it about 600 miles, which is actually pretty good for somebody with POTS and all of the things that I have. I had to quit due to some psychiatric and social complications, and I felt like I obviously had to make a video on this situation because trail news is probably going to spread like fire about me. Um, and I hate trail news, and I'll explain why I hate trail news. I've come to hate it. It's my worst enemy. And I just wanted to tell you kind of my perspective of what happened since I'm the person that a lot of people, are going to be talking about. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try to be defending myself for a lot of the actions that I did. Um, because a lot of the actions that I tried to do the right thing. I tried to do the right thing, and it really fucked me over bad because there was just so many miscommunications, partial information, things of that sort, false information about me. Now, the reason why I left the trail had to be search and rescued off the trail, and then I was brought to a hospital where most of my rights were abused, and I didn't know when I was going to get out. So the reason why I was brought to the hospital is actually a continuation of part one. Now, part one is the last video I made. The last video I made about talking about Damascus and what happened in Damascus during trail days in the Stone Lion Hostel. Particularly the individual that I'm talking about is the girl that unfortunately had a young family member that passed away due to suicide and was a trans youth. Happened in 2026, just right after my suicide attempts in 2025. Had a very similar kind of method of usage. Basically, we're talking about that individual, that through hiker. So part one will be a requirement to watch. Now, why don't I explain all over again what happened? Because it's about 30 minutes worth of explanation, lengthy explanations. And I really wish that I could explain it to you, but I don't think that, I think that it would do harm to like viewer retention and things like that if I talked about, gave a rerun of basically what happened. Okay, so basically I went to the ER. I'm just gonna give a quick recap. Went to the ER. I went to the psych ward. That hiker, that girl that had the young family member that died, I will keep her anonymous, and if there's any mention of her trail name, I will make sure to scrub it completely from this video. I will be rewatching this video. So, before uploading, just to be responsible, basically. But if you know, you know. Like, if you're on the trail and you hear the name, you know. So, we're talking about that girl with the young family member that basically did that to me. I'm hypomanic right now, by the way. I've been dealing with a mixed episode for about 2 weeks of depression and mania. So, right. So, we're talking about that individual, that girl. So, I'm going to give a quick recap. She said she would take care of all my possessions, including my ID, my cards, my electronics, my charging devices, my clothes, my food, and my water. She said that she would do that. There was reason to believe she had my possessions because the hostel that we were staying at was small, new. There was going to be a lot of business there, and I genuinely did not think that the owner was I thought that she was going to be nice enough to volunteer to take care of my stuff for the hostel owner. Because Trail Days was coming up, obviously the hostel was going to be completely booked up full. And it was, like I said, a very small kind of hostel. Bunks take up most of the square space in the hostel. And there's only like a very small kitchen area and some bathrooms and dressing rooms. So there was reason to believe that she had my possessions. She volunteered to take my possessions. And she told me that after I had gotten out of the hospital that we would continue hiking the trail together and that we would summit katana together. She also referred to me as her best friend and someone that she loved platonically. Keep in mind, if trail news is spreading around and you think that this is just, something it was a romantic exchange, it was not. It was not sexual nor romantic. We were deeply platonic. That's it. I had my partner, she had her partner, both long distance relationships, and we did not engage or were planning to engage in any romance or sexual activities, nor did at any point I figured that we would. So I want you to keep that in mind because that's a big thing. That's a big thing. And with incomplete trail information, false narratives, that can change the story quite a bit. So, or the mental image of quite a bit about what actually happened. We were platonic. So basically, she said she would do all these things. I had reason to believe she had my possessions. She ended up not telling me or texting me or communicating with me once or attempting to once about where all my things were. I called up the hostel owner. He had my things, which I was surprised since Trail Days was about to happen, and Trail Days is massive. I was obviously very upset because I had just gone to the ER after I actually thought I was going to die from my med mix, from how much meds I took, because it was considerably more than December 2025. Luckily, it didn't turn south because I was my heart, I think, was stronger at the time. Number one, there wasn't cumulative toxicity. In December, I had 3 attempts. So the cumulative toxicity is something. And number two is my heart's much stronger, much more capable now that I did 470 miles of hiking at the time of the attempt in Damascus. Because it's about 470 in. So, but there was reason to believe that I was going to die, right? I was faced with this huge reality as I was recovering the psych ward, and meanwhile I'm worried about where all my cards and cash and things are, because if I go out of the ward, and I don't have any of that, I'm going to be on the street, or I'm going to be without basic food or water, right? I had clothes, but do you understand how concerning that is, right? So obviously I'm going to be upset with her, right? Obviously I'm going to have a pissed expression on my face, right? So, and the other thing that's not really nice to do is to tell somebody that you're their best friend, her words, and then if you're gonna cancel your plans with them, then just say so, or at least tell somebody to tell me where my things are and whether our plans are canceled, right? If you don't want to communicate with me anymore, you have to tell me some of these things, because I'm in the ER and because I'm in the psych ward and because I do not have physical access to my possessions. And you volunteered for the responsibility. Just because you're my best friend or at the time does not mean that you have to volunteer to watch my stuff, right? And it's not the hostel owner's, well, sort of, because I was a paying customer at the time. So maybe a little bit it was his responsibility. Maybe. But the point is that if you're going to volunteer to take care of somebody's stuff during an emergency, you need to follow through with it and communicate with them, because their entire lives, their ID and their card and cash, their entire buying power, plus hundreds of dollars a year, is in your hands as far as they know. And and if you do not want to volunteer with it anymore, to be fair, she didn't really think that I was going to be in the ward, but she had there was the idea that I was going to be there for several days, because she told me about visiting me in the hospital, how she would absolutely do it. She didn't try. As far as I'm aware, just based on Discord communication, that was the only social media we had on. So obviously I'm going to be pissed, right? So the hostel owner has my stuff. Basically, I go back to the hostel. I try to pack my things up. The owner is provoking me because when I tell him about what happened, he said, sorry, which is a really fucking insincere thing to do to somebody after they tried to kill themselves, and there was reasonable belief to me that I was not going to survive. And the last person that you could have seen alive in your entire 21 years of life has basically taken off and abandoned you, and has not had, there was a lack of transparency, and not only that, but because again, if you don't want to hike with me, if you don't want to see me again, that is your choice. Nobody has a commitment or a responsibility to hike Katahdin with me, but you have to make it clear at least where my things are, and it would be nice if you told me that our plans were off, that they were not on anymore, that we were not going to hike together anymore. That's called, that's being a decent person. Um, and I think that was quite inconsiderate. So obviously I'm going to have a pissed expression on my face. I return back to the hostel and pack my things there because I had the hostels closed, and because after being EMT'd out of there, which probably isn't a good look for the new business, the least I could do was return the clothes that he offered the hikers, because that's the nice, respectful thing to do. He at no time asked me to leave his property. He at no time said that I needed to relocate somewhere else. I even asked him. He didn't respond. He didn't help in any way, which he's not required to, but it would have been nice, I'm just packing my things there. Some of it is still soaked from the rain, because when I went into Damascus, it had rained that day. And so nobody had even really looked inside my bag during the time. So, she didn't really pack my things, this girl, and really didn't take care of that. So yeah, I had to deal with like a wet tent and a wet sleeping bag that probably had mold now. Basically, I had a pissed expression on my face because of that. If the hostel owner would have asked me about it, because he was concerned about it apparently, when my dad called him, when my father called him and asked why I was trespassed by the police, he was like, because we heard that, Astra is really, I saw that Astra was really pissed and I was really worried. You didn't approach me once. You didn't ask me why I was pissed. And wouldn't you be pissed too if you were on edge about where everything that you owned was? And that if you didn't have your stuff, then you wouldn't be able to buy a room or food for the night, plus hundreds of dollars worth of specialized gear gone? Wouldn't you be pissed? Wouldn't you have a pissed expression on your face, Stone Line hostel owner? I imagine so. Right? I don't think you would be too happy about that. But people can't put each other in their shoes. People aren't transparent, don't ask. So, yeah, he provoked me by saying sorry, and of course I'm going to get irritated at him because he's telling me that he put my ID, my credit card, my cash, my most important things in my shoe, my trail shoe, and he said, well, that's where you put it. That is not where I put my ID, my cash, and my clothes. Or, I'm sorry, not my clothes. My ID, my cash, my card. That's not where I put them. And if he would have actually been an adult and actually stand there for 5 minutes, I understand you're a busy hostel owner and you have trail days, but I'm a customer. I paid for 2 nights to be there, and I was one of your first customers. If you would have stood there for 5 minutes and talked to the transport staff and me, we would have all probably figured out the conclusion was you did put it in my new trail shoes, but the ward staff took it out and placed it somewhere else. That's all you had to do. Yes, I was anxious. Yes, I was irritated. But there's reason to. I was not a Walmart Karen. I shouted hey to some people sitting over at the patio one time. That's it. I did not approach them angry. I was outside during the entire time, and I was not really impeding on the hostel's space. There was nobody out there. I was not in the middle of like a cookout or a party. I did not yell. I did not physically threaten, verbally abuse anybody. You did not tell me at any time to stop any such behaviors. There was no reason to um, believe that if you were to confront me about any of my unreasonable behaviors that I would have gotten violent, because I've never had a tirade while I was there, or any time during the trail. The only time that I had a freak out before this was when somebody confronted me about trail etiquette, and that was just me crying and having a panic attack. That was not me verbally arguing with them. So there was no reason to. So that's enough of that. Okay? I just wanted to. I got really pissed there for a second. So basically, the Stone Lion hostel owner throws me out, says I'm a threat to the guests. Obviously, now all of the guests are gonna think that I'm some sort of crazy, psycho homicidal person. When I was, if you say I was institutionalized and then I was thrown out of the cops for trespassing, you're probably thinking that that person's a homicidal freak. When in reality, all I was a depressed, very kind, gentle person at the time that was struggling with mental health, that was crying, that was having sympathy for somebody else's young family member that passed away from a very relatable suicide and suicide attempt, or I'm sorry, suicide method. Okay, that's it. I was not because people have this idea that if you're admitted to a psych ward, you're automatically a crazy person with the knife chasing other hikers. No, I was just suicidal, and I was really sad, and I just needed somebody to hug me, somebody to basically just guide me. That's all I needed. I'm a very nice person if you meet me, I promise you. If I'm manic, if I'm hypomanic, if I'm depressed, it doesn't matter. I'm a very nice person, and I'm not, a freak just because I had to go for a few days. So they made sure that, I wasn't trying to kill myself because the world got too hard. That is a stereotype. It is a nasty stereotype. And there was no reason to suspect that I was ever a threat to others. But because the hostel owner did what he did, because I had a pissed expression on my face and was getting anxious and irritated, and the hikers inside are not going to hear my story at all because now I'm trespassed, and they're going to only get some of the information, some of the visual information, and of course the hostel owner is on the property, so he could just tell them everything that happened, and then all these hikers are going to think I'm crazy and homicidal and like a maniac. You see what I'm saying? This sort of stuff is so unfair to me. So after I got kicked out and everything, so I go to the store, and at this point I'm blocking this girl because of what I just mentioned. And and in the Discord block, I say at the very end, I hope that, I believe, like 99%, I hope that you summit Katahdin, and I hope that you have a very good life. Does that sound like somebody that's homicidal? Does that sound like somebody that's a threat to others? No. I was pissed. I had a pissed expression on my face, and at this time I was telling other thru hikers that I was going to go and confront her about it. Because literally I could have been homeless, sleeping on the street with no food and no real clothes, and I couldn't get a new debit card because my ID was missing, if she had my stuff and didn't tell me, so yeah, I think that deserves a confrontation. I think it does. I told the thru hikers though that it was just going to be like a friendly, like, hey, why did you hurt me, why did you do this? That's all it was going to be. That's what I told them. And I told every single one of them that it was going to be a very simple and very friendly kind of persuasion. Like, can you not do this to me, please? Like, you took off, I mean, doesn't that deserve like some sort of, like in real life, like discussion? And it was the other reason why I wanted to catch up with her so bad was because I wanted to talk about her feelings. I know that what I did caused a lot of trauma for her, and I'm extremely sorry. If you're listening to me right now, I am looking at you. I am so incredibly sorry for the trauma that I potentially caused you by doing what I did at the hostel and trying to end my life. I could not be more sorry for you than that. I'm sure that was incredibly hard, and I am so sorry about that. Um, I was going to talk about that. I was going to try to reach a resolution. And, I was going to try to, because it seemed incongruent to me. It seemed like it didn't make sense. Because there are a lot of people that are good people that, would love to hang out with you, but they just don't reply on Discord. They don't really respond. They look at your texts, but they just, they don't really respond. They don't really, there are actually people that I know that are like that kind of just freeze up. They look at your messages. They don't really reply. And so I'm thinking, because we shared such genuine emotions at the hostel before my attempt, and because, she was just comforting me so much while I was on the bed, potentially, dying, I was very confused. And so that's why I wanted to catch up with her and just talk to her once. And if she didn't want to talk, then I was just going to be like, okay, I'll go along my way, you go along your way. And I would say my part about, you can't just drop the ball like this. And then I would go. I would leave. That was my plan. That's what I told people. That was my plan. So, yeah, but obviously you can see why I'm going to have pissed expression on my face. So that's not the only reason why I started hiking a lot of miles after Damascus. Actually, for a time, I didn't even know if she was ahead of me, if she was behind me. I didn't know for the longest time. I wanted to get ahead because by this point, I actually am thinking I'm behind, right? Because I'm 470 miles in, and I'm like 50 days in, or whatever. And I was a little, I don't know the math, but basically I was averaging like 7 miles a day or something. And my dad like calculated the math out, and I was going to finish in January. Obviously not an option because the Whites, Katahdin, that area is going to be all snowy, right? And you can't just climb in fucking 6 feet of snow and ice, right? You're going to die. You're going to, you need specialized winter gear and training, and it costs a lot of money, weight, and it's just dangerous. Right, and so after 3 zeros at the psych ward, because I wasn't planning on taking a bunch of zeros, I was planning, and people that are at the Stone Line Hostel will know this, I was planning on staying there one day at trail days before kind of moving on, because at this time the girl and I, we were like friends. We as far as I know, according to her, but we weren't planning on hiking together. It wasn't until I took the mix that she said we would hike together. Right? And so I was thinking, okay, I got to make up all these miles because of trail days. Because I was in the psych ward for 72 hours, and I'm only averaging like 7 miles a day, and I'm going to finish in January. And obviously that's not possible, so I'm going to lose this, fight against time to do this whole 2,200 mile stretch in one sitting. So, basically, I want to emphasize this. While I was hiking, I was very depressed. I was in a mixed episode, and I'm still in that same mixed episode, and it's about 2 weeks later. And, it was about 2 weeks later. Like, I'm still in a mixed episode. I'm pretty manic right now. But basically, when I was hiking, my plans at first were not to catch up to her. I didn't even know where she was. I didn't even know she was still in Damascus when I started hiking, actually. Actually, I think I did, because there was one hiker that told me she was on the trail or whatever, this girl, but I wasn't for sure. So I started hiking big miles. The Iron Mountain Trail, I did 18 miles, including some night hiking. Now, why do I do night hiking? Is it because I'm some sort of creep, and like I'm obsessed with this girl that I'm trying to romantically get with, and she's not, no. First of all, we're not romantic. I'm trying to dismantle this common, because I was assigned male at birth, and people are very sensitive to this idea of a male trying to catch up to like a girl and the girl's uncomfortable, and you get the point. I'm a trans woman. I am not a guy. I I have the testosterone. I don't My testosterone's like in the 20s. Um I am not a guy, right? But we were platonic. So why did I night hike all those miles? Well, yes, I wanted to catch up to her obviously at some point. Cuz it's at first I wasn't planning to catch up with her, but then somebody told me, "Oh yeah, you know what? She's just right ahead of you." I was like, "Okay, well, maybe, I'll just gently talk to her. I'll just gently talk to her. If she doesn't want to talk to me, then, I'll move on." I was only planning on talking to her once. That's it. One time. And if she denied wanting to talk to me, I was going to move on. I said that to basically every single through hiker that I told. Um, Now, I will admit that I did not keep anonymity. Um, I think because I was manic and I was just like, I don't know. I just didn't suppress it. I eventually like said I'm trying to catch up to through hiker name, right? And so I do apologize for that. That's on me. I'm really sorry about that. But I kind of figured that I didn't want it to be a surprise. I thought, if she knew I was coming to kind of talk to her, that she seemed like from our real life interactions, despite the Discord, not saying anything on Discord, she seemed like the type of person that would say, "Yeah, we can chat. Roadblock wants to talk to me. Like, yeah, we can chat. We can make it up." It was so confusing to me. I wasn't really sure, but I was fairly confident that she wouldn't mind me trying to catch up, or maybe she would mind a bit, but we could resolve it in some way. And I was hoping that the thru hikers would tell her my intentions, because my intentions, even though I was manic, even though I was kind of loud, and you got to understand, when I'm manic, I'm not. I don't really get pissed. I don't yell. I'm just really happy, or I talk a lot, right? You gotta understand that. And I told thru hikers that. I told thru hikers I'm dealing with mania right now, but, you know, I've never posed a threat to others, and I don't have any weapons. Like, I don't. I don't have any weapons. I couldn't even get a gun. Like, that would be that would be illegal for me, I think, because I've already been institutionalized, or I'm not really institutionalized. I've already been, in a war due to suicidal thoughts. Uh, you know, so yeah, like I told through hikers that, because I knew I was manic at the time, and I knew they were like, "Whoa, this person has a lot of energy," and they are kind of angry because, like of what happened. This girl basically just, taking off or whatever. I was a bit angry. I was a bit loud, but I wasn't like, "I'm gonna catch up." I was just like, "I'm gonna catch up," I, but I'm just gonna ask her, like, why did you do this? Like, it hurt me. I wanted to catch up to her because I feel like it was necessary closure for her as well. It's just like, it's a big thing, because I block her after, everything, um and I just, this could be the last person that I've ever seen in my life. So so I just kind of wanted to catch up for closure. So anyways, um I made it very clear to the through hikers that I was not posing a threat, that this was not a romantic thing. I made sure to clarify that I'm not really strong, right? I've never there's no I wasn't really. I was loud because I was manic and I was energetic. I was night hiking and things like that because I wanted to make up a lot of miles because of the zeros I took at the psych ward. Um, Purely for suicidal thoughts, purely just because, I just needed some time to. I just needed some support. That's all it was. That's all it was. Um, Now, this is where trail news is a bitch. And I'll tell you, I might make a separate video on this, saying don't believe trail news. So, am I going to blame any individual through hiker? No. In fact, I would say that this is normal psychology. So, right, I'm night hiking. I'm trying to do the miles to, eventually I figure out that she's ahead of me. I'm trying to do the miles to kind of just, so we can both get closure, so we can both, like, maybe come to an understanding, just hug each other, just, it's really, I'm sorry. I was getting emotional there. It's really hard, so I'm thinking, okay, I will do, it can sound really bad if you put it into context, or if there's only parts of it that are in context, right? So I'm on the spectrum, and so the weather's been really shitty. I'm trying to look forward to something. There's not really much to look forward to because it's going to be rainy and foggy and shitty for the next week and a half. There's no mountains, as far as I'm aware, that are of, like, there's no, like, mountains or like areas on the trail that I'm looking forward to after the Grayson Highlands, because this was after the Grayson Highlands. There's none of that. Like, so I'm trying to look forward to something. And when you're on the spectrum, it's not about, like, I have an obsession, an unhealthy obsession with this person, and, it's creepy. And no, you got to understand spectrum brains, right? So anything that's on your mind is on your mind a lot. So if you're looking back for an exam grade, if you're looking to, I don't know, go to lunch with a person because you really like the restaurant, if you're looking forward to a specific section on the AT, if you're looking forward to, I don't know, a vacation of some sort, if you're looking forward to a class that you're going to take, it doesn't matter. It's not about, being creepy and weird and obsessed with a person. It's what autistic minds do. When something's on their mind, especially when there's nothing really to look forward to on the trail, when the weather's shitty, when you're trying to be upbeat, when you're trying to get more miles done, and this could be a potential motivator, you're going to think and talk a lot about what that thing is. And what that thing was I'm just going to, talk to this person once because this is the last person I could have seen alive, and I think we could both get closure. I think we could both come to an understanding. I think the both of us, I wanted to give that opportunity to her. And if she decided not to, that's fine. I would have moved on. I would have moved on. So you have to understand that it's not, just a her thing. It's an autism thing. And so I think what happened is trail news happened. So I think what happened is that people were like, so she eventually found out about it. Now we're getting to what actually happened that took me off the trail. She found out about it. I cannot say definitively for sure, but I guarantee you. Oh yeah, people actually told her. No, it was confirmed. Never mind. Yeah, people actually told her that I was trying to catch up to her. And she got really freaked out and scared. Now, I don't know why or what was said. This is where I'm going to talk about trail news and why it's so problematic. And any AT through hiker, or any, like, section hiker through it, if you're anybody that's going on the trail, any trail that's long term for like a long time, I want you to listen to this. There is a problem with human psychology. So if I tell you, I don't know, let me write something down. I saw a pink fox laying down in the corner. Now, obviously, you would spread that around because a pink fox is an anomaly. But let's just take that out for a moment. Let's say it's normal. I saw a pink fox sitting there in a corner or laying there in a corner. So, I tell somebody this and they tell somebody, they might say, he saw or she saw a fox laying over in the corner. Now, realize the pink part is now out of there. You see where I'm going with this? And so the next person that person tells, they might say, she saw a fox laying. So now it's not laying in the corner, it's a fox laying. And then the next person is going to say, she saw a fox. So see how much information, we probably removed like half of the total words just by a couple people spreading the news to somebody. And it's more dynamic than that, of course. You're going to get different bits of information from different people. But the point is, what probably happened is that I did tell a lot of context and a lot of information to hikers, and it is not I'm not blaming the through hikers, okay? I'm not. They couldn't see this being a problem. I understand. It is normal psychology, and it is not the fault of anybody, and I'm not blaming anybody for this. And I don't actually truly know what really happened, but I do know that she was told and that she was terrified that I was coming, that I was making up miles. So what probably happened is that I told a bunch of through hikers that, to kind of make, so they understood that I was coming to talk with her, just give the opportunity for kind of a closure, right? And it was rainy and shitty and stuff, like, and we just did the Grayson Highlands, and there wasn't really anything in the next 50 miles or whatever that I knew of that was, very interesting coming up, right? We didn't really have much to look forward to during this time. It was really rainy, shitty, people were yellow blazing, people were quitting. What I think happened is that I told a bunch of crucial information, and then because it passed from person to person, and because people only retain some of that information, I'm not calling people dumb or dumber than me, because I would also do that. If somebody told me something, a paragraph, I would probably only remember 80% of it. Do you understand? And then I relay that 80% to somebody else that relays 80% of that, and 80%, and it's a fraction of that, right? So I think that a lot of the context was removed. And then I think that people also dramatize things. Why? Because people pay attention to you. And everybody likes attention, right? Everybody wants to be, looked at like, whoa, that's actually interesting. That's interesting, So when you have those two things happen, you could see how this would be a problem, right? And so I guarantee you that what she heard was very negative. When if you actually look at the facts of the case, yes, I'm a manic mess, I know, but I'm a fun mess. I tell people this, like, okay, yes, I'm hypomanic, but I'm fun. It's fun to talk to me. It's fun to kind of hang out with me. I'm a bit erratic, but I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not hurting myself. I'm not assaultive. I'm not destructive. When I was at the Mount Rogers Visitor Center and I was talking with people, I was playing games in the corner. I was not pacing around and yelling and screaming like I was on a methamphetamine or something. I don't take drugs at all. I've never taken a drug. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can turn Astra is, doing some extra miles. She's night hiking because of... Oh, and that's another thing. That's another thing I wanted to say. Why did I night hike in the fog and the mist and the rain? right? Because that sounds deeply unsafe. Well, yes, I was manic, so my impulses were a little bit lowered, but it's actually because with POTS, with very rare exceptions, one of these exceptions was at the partnership shelter. I had gotten 4 or 5 hours of sleep after 25 miles of hiking, and I was fine. I was happy, you know. um, with very, very, very few exceptions, very, very few, um, I was not able to get up earlier than like 10:30 a.m. And this is a problem if you're going to do miles, right? And you want to avoid night. And you would think, okay, well, if you hike at night, then you're just going to get up later than 10:30. Not really. That's not really how it works. So at first I was terrified of night hiking, but then I said, you know what? Like, because I have to make up extra miles after the ward, and because my nervous system works very well at night, there are lower temperatures at night because it was starting to get hot during some of the days. Um, it's beneficial to hike at night, right? It was not because I was super pissed marching through the mountains and I was like, hey, are you this hiker? And I would go up on a tent and say like, hey, are you this random hiker? You this random girl that I'm trying to... It was not like that, right? And even if this whole situation didn't happen, I truly do believe, like if I stayed for trail days and, I did more zeros than I wanted, I truly do believe that I would still be hiking 20 or 25 miles because I'm manic, because I have more energy, and because with the way that my POTS works, it's actually more beneficial to hike at night. So again, when you dramatize it and you leave context out of it, it can sound terrifying. Astra is loud and manic, is hiking in the middle of the night lots of miles to catch up with you and confront you. That's really scary. That's a really scary statement, right? But if you give context, why do I night hike? Why do I talk about you a lot? Because of exhaustion, autism, there's not really any cool sections of the trail, because you were the last person that I could have seen ever in my entire life, and you just walked off. That's hard to live with. I have to live with that for the rest of my life, because you see what I'm saying? Um, because she's manic, but she's not a threat to anybody else. And if you were around her, there would not be a police officer to grab her off the street. Like, I'm not super erratic even when I'm highly manic. Even when I'm manic and not hypomanic, it mostly just disrupts, like, I don't know, it just disrupts my ability to, like, do tasks. But I'm not, I don't really get a... You gotta understand, right? So if you give context to each one of those parts, the night hiking, the autistic focus, the reason why I was thrown out of the hostel, which, by the way, a lot of those hikers never got my side of the story, so they probably went around spreading a bunch of news about it. Um, uh, the reason why I was thrown out of the hostel, unreasonable owner. There are a bunch of things. A bunch of things. Oh, and also the confrontation itself. Very light, very casual. Why did you hurt me? I was going to approach her. I was going to say, I'm friendly. I'm not here. Um, the reason why I told the thru hikers that I was coming, for example, right? That too, right? So it wasn't a total shock. Um, yeah, when you actually give context to all those things, it makes it so much less scarier. But because people dramatize things, and because people are going to only leave bits of information, and again, it's psychology. We don't remember 100% of the things. Nobody does, right? Especially on the Appalachian Trail, like with so much information sent, input and everything, you're not going to remember a paragraph or 2 paragraphs of information. At the time, I should have thought about this, but I didn't. right? So I'm not blaming anybody from it. I'm not going to say, you didn't remember, you didn't tell this because you were trying to be malicious. No, no. And even the dramatized part, people didn't realize that this would happen, right? People just want to tell interesting stories, and so they ramp it up. They make it far more dramatic than it needs to be. I've done that here because I'm kind of manic right now, but you understand. So she freaked out. Eventually, so I went to the Bear Garden Hostel and I tried to get a spot there at like 10 p.m. I night hiked there. I was just gonna stay there for the night. Um, and I didn't know. You know, some hostel owners let you check in at 10 p.m. You know, I kind of thought it might have been like a hotel kind of thing. And some hostels don't. I just rang the doorbell at the Bear Hostel and I didn't really know what to expect. And I felt really, really bad. I wanted to tip the owner. He said that he had tent camping, but the reason why I didn't do tent camping at the Bear Garden Hostel is because there was a big uphill up ahead. And I take propranolol in the morning for POTS, and I like when there's a downhill. Um, so that way, by the time the uphill comes, my propranolol has kicked in. Basically, nobody wants a big uphill climb, especially in the wet fog and mist in the morning. Nobody. And so I hiked up to the shelter, you know, like 4 miles or so. You know, I didn't ever talk to him about this girl, whether this girl was here or anything. I did not. I did not mention her. I was not staying at that hostel because of her. Although I was kind of interested, like, is she here? Like, I don't know, because again, I did want to see her. But I went up to the shelter because from the Bear Garden shelter, there's a shelter with a climb, so I wanted to do that at night, and it's on the downhill. So in the morning, I would have a downhill. And I really needed it because the next morning and the afternoon were very muggy and hot. And that was actually the day that I got evac. So I'm climbing and I reach mile 568.3. And there I call the Burke Garden Hostel. They're full. They're filled with tents. Everything is filled with tents, right? And so everything's full with tents. Or I'm sorry, everybody is in the bunks. I'm sorry. It's full as far as like bunks and everything. But I wanted a tent site. I did, because it was a very fucking hard day of climbing. And I was just done. And I wanted a hostel, right? Even though I was in a tent, I got access to showers and free supply and things like that. So I call up the Burke Garden Hostel owner. And I say, I'd like to reserve a spot. My name's Roadblock. He's like, no, we're not going to accept you. I'm sorry, I can't accept you here. You know what you did. Goodbye. That's what he said to me. Now, I understand that no matter what, he couldn't take me into his hostel. And I'm not going to criticize him for that. Why? Because even if I explain my situation 120% for the good, like explain to him everything that actually happened within context, within reasonable context, he obviously wouldn't allow me into his hostel for business purposes. I'm just one hiker on the AT, right? And so as much as I could kind of defend myself and tell him, what actually happened, he's not going to let me in because it could cause a massive conflict, right? So I understand if he said, we can't let you in here, but I'm interested on what actually happened. That would have been fine. But he didn't actually allow me to defend myself in any way. When I called my father and he asked the Burke Garden Hostel owner, he did not allow my dad to talk with him in any sort of way. And the Burke Garden Hostel owner actually said something to my dad, which was like, us hostel owners talk to each other. We heard what happened. So basically what I'm getting is that the Stone Line Hostel owner told the Burke Garden Hostel owner about me. And what's actually interesting is my dad called the Stone Line Hostel owner, and the Stone Line Hostel owner's like, I never said anything about Astra. I don't buy it. By the way, there are a lot of people too that have directly told me, this isn't trail news, have directly told me that the Stone Lion Hostel owner is a piece of shit. Has told me all sorts of bad things about him. Now, to be fair, he doesn't have a defense, right? I didn't ask him for his side of the story on the things. But, given that I have firsthand experience with him, after he provoked me and wouldn't actually act like a reasonable adult when I was reasonably pissed when I was at his hostel and trying to return his clothes, and he didn't act like an adult and he was a baby and threw me off with trespass, I can see why other people would rate him negative. And I'm willing to believe that he lied to my dad. I think he did call the other hostel owners, or he's communicating with the other hostel owners about me, which is it does piss me off. It does. I think the guy, I personally think the guy has a superficial level charm, and underneath, this is a Stone Lion hostel owner, and underneath he's not a good person. I spoke to other hikers that have directly dealt with him. They say he's very negative, and and has kind of the same kind of experiences as I did. So again, I'm talking about how I wasn't able to have my defense. I will say, be extremely careful, because I don't know what happened, and the Stone Lion hostel owner can't defend himself from what I heard, because he's not there, because I'm with the Thru hikers after the hostel. I'm just saying. So, as for the Burke Garden hostel, the guy didn't let me know anything about what he heard, nor didn't let me defend myself in any meaningful way. Didn't tell me what he heard. Didn't treat me like a reasonable person. Basically just yelled at me and dehumanized me, and hung up on both my dad and I when we tried to get the situation straight. Because, what, am I going to be denied from a third hostel and a fifth hostel and a sixth hostel when there are no cities nearby and I need to resupply? You can't do the trail like that. So obviously I have a panic attack, right? I have an absolutely massive panic attack. Sorry, my nose itches. Because I was just dehumanized. Quite literally. I was literally dehumanized and not given a chance to speak. So, hold on here. Okay. Let's see. Give me a second here. This is just really important. I don't want my video disrupted. And I don't really cut out things. Just give me a second. Okay, my bad. So basically, yeah, he didn't give me any sort of defense or transparency or anything. Just kicked me out and said I wasn't allowed here. My father called, basically said Astra is not allowed in here. That's sad. That's really sad, and it's kind of shitty to do to somebody, you know? So this is why I urge people to be very careful with trail news, because it can quite literally ruin people. Meet the hiker that everyone says is negative. Meet them first. Before, unless people are saying like this person has a machete and they're going around trying to hurt hikers, maybe stay away from them then, right? And don't take that risk. But if there's like a bunch of negative things being said about somebody, especially psychologically, meet them first and get their side of the story, because what they're telling people radiates out in chunks and only gets worse as it spreads. That's why I don't like trail news. So anyways, after the Burke Garden hostel owner, I panic on a field and I call 988. Now, I've had good past experiences with 988, particularly the ones in Dallas, Texas, or the ones based in Texas. They're sweethearts. I love them in Texas. I've not had good experiences here in Oklahoma. I was in a very deep panic attack, and I was worried that maybe I would get kind of suicidal. Um, why did I call them? Because it wouldn't be fair to the other hikers if I took a bunch of meds and just died on the trail, or to vanish and make them worry and stress about me. That wouldn't be fair to them. It would not. It would not be fair to the search and rescue people that actually have to, that have to physically rescue people that, went off. You understand? I did this not just for me, but for you all. I called them so they would try to help me get back on my feet. And I just panic attacked, cried, was hyperventilating, and then there were some hikers that came and basically got me back up on my feet eventually. That was not fair to them, and I am very, very sorry for that. But it is better than taking a bunch of pills and finding me dead, which you have to live with for the rest of your life, versus one of your many trail days getting ruined. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big fucking, way more fair. And I wasn't about to do this again after what I had done to that girl and all the other thru hikers in Damascus that were at that hostel. I was not. So I did this not just for me, but for them. Now, while I'm on the phone, I'm like, there's poor cell connection. I'm saying a bunch of things in kind of parts. Like, when you have a panic attack, you could say 2 words in one sentence and then 2 words in another sentence, and you don't get your full sentences out. And it can sound really bad if the wrong things are said. So the lady on the phone accused me of saying that because I was crying about this girl, because my dad had told me about this girl being terrified and, that she was going to go off the trail. Hey, if you're listening, by the way, I'm off the trail. You can go. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. You don't have to ever contact me again. I don't expect you. I'm not trying to reach out to you anymore. You're scared, you're terrified, you don't want to chat with me, then yeah, I just wanted to reach out. I just wanted to try to fix the whole thing. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. But obviously I'm panicking. I'm thinking my trail days are over, right? And my dad's texting me this girl is freaking out and she's leaving off the trail. She's terrified of you. The Burke Garden Hostel owner refused me. So 988 thought I said that I had wanted to form a suicide pact with her after the trail. I at no point had any plans of this at all. It is important to note that at one point after the trail, at one point of time, I was telling people that after the trail I was going to commit suicide. That was at one point in time. I was telling some thru hikers that. But I had never said that I was going to form a suicide pact with this girl. That was never my plan. We had never discussed that. I have never said that to anybody. But because the nature of the panic attack, because of poor cell connection, and one of the things I was venting to them about on the phone was she said she would pack my stuff. And packed, P-A-C-K-E-D and P-A-C-T sound very similar. So of course you could get, I want to form a suicide pact with her. I was going to form a suicide pact with her. So 988 immediately hung up, I believe. They hung up and we tried to get them back on the line and the agent wasn't available anymore or something. And so now that I think about it, I think probably what happened is that there was a very serious, they hung up and they were very concerned about me being a threat to her or something, and so they hung up, and then that agent was no longer available, and because they just hung up, and then I tried calling them back. They wouldn't pick up the phone. They never tried to call me back. 988 never tried to call me back. So we get to the top of the mountain, after my panic attack, because by the end of the call, the 988 call, I'm basically back up on my feet, and there's like 10 hikers there, and we go to the Chestnut Knob shelter. Now, this isn't a beautiful shelter, but I had no idea. I didn't know that. I actually would have preferred to stay there than the hostel anyway, I think, because of the views and because of how nice the shelter is itself. So, the Chestnut Knob shelter is an absolutely beautiful shelter. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's over. We got to solve with 988. It's fine. Guy comes in that has helped me calm down, and he's like, search and rescue have been called, and they're coming up because they're very concerned about what you said. Now, I don't know if this through hiker thinks now that I told 988 that I was going to form a suicide pact with her, but I hope to God that he didn't, because I never said that, and I will never say. I've never had plans to do that, and I've never thought about that, and I'm not homicidal in any way. So search and rescue comes up the mountain, sheriff's office, and involuntarily escorts me down in a pouring rain in the middle of the night after a very hard climb. Like literally fucking pouring rain in like a thunderstorm or whatever. And my like raincoat, my shit is wet. We're in the mud. We're going down a steep hill. And I try explaining to them everything that happened. Why? Because at this point of time, I wasn't sure if I was going to get charged with stalking, even though, for one, I was only going to confront her one time, and if it was completely optional, and it was just to give her the chance for both of us to get reasonable closure. For two, I had no weapons, made no threats of sexual violence, or that I was going to harm her in any way, that this was a platonic and only platonic friendship that we had. And for three, I haven't contacted her in any other virtual way besides the Discord where I blocked her. And the reason why I didn't reach out to her on Discord again was because I do not like... because she did not really respond on there, and text-based interactions can really lead to a bunch of arguments and misinterpretations because things like tone are missing. And because I feel like a real-life interaction would have been more appropriate given just the nature of Damascus. So I explained this to the sheriff. The sheriff's there at Search and Rescue, because I wasn't sure at this point, because there's a lot of trail drama happening. She's freaking out. She's scared. She's, traumatized or whatever. And so I don't know if a police report's going to be opened on this, a police investigation. So I tell them that this is not stalking, right? And that that I'm following all of the Virginia laws. There was no reason to assume that I was a threat to her, and even though I was manic. Actually, I think at this point I was a bit depressed. It's been alternating, and sometimes it's just in between, where I'm experiencing both poles. And then I was only going to do this once, and then I didn't follow any of her social medias because I didn't know them, because I don't know, and I'm not going to look because we're done. I'm not going to reach out to her anymore. You've clearly expressed that you don't want me to reach out. So I go down with them, and I'm explaining to them why I'm scared for my safety. Look, through hikers, anybody takes a male, because even though I'm a trans woman, I'm a male, and a female being very distressed, very seriously, right? And so depending on the information that's out there, which I got none from the Burke Garden Hostel, from anybody else, I'm scared. I am legitimately scared for my safety, because if I continue on the trail and I run into this girl, or even just other through hikers, they could kick my ass just based on the notion of everybody sharing their piece without me being there to actually verify it, to explain, to give context. So I'm scared for my life. I could even have a gun pulled out on me, right? If some of the through hikers are armed, if they're with her in a group and I just happen to come by or whatever, I could get a fucking gun pulled on me. And I'm just like some kid on this fucking spectrum. I'm just like 21. Um, I'm very, very scared for. So I tell them that too. I'm scared for my safety. So that's why I explained to the sheriffs it was because I wasn't sure if a report would be opened up, and because. And I told the sheriffs all my contact information if they needed to get a hold of me. And because I was actually scared of my safety at this point in time. Is that on anybody else? No. Just because I'm scared for my safety and now I'm at risk of other through hikers, it doesn't automatically mean it's their fault. It's just the way that trail news spreads. And I can't obviously blame anybody because I'm not there. I just know that it's faulty trail news because nobody should be really terrified. Or, well, I don't want to say that. I don't think that she would be terrified if she knew all this context. So then I'm transported to the ER. And I'm at Tazewell Hospital. Now, I get in there, and at first it seems like a pretty good ER. And the doctor, I think, has Asperger's, but very, very nice guy. And I explained to him what happened, and he seemed to agree with me. He actually did after I explained everything. Because at first he was like, well, you're chasing girls, and you don't know when to stop. And I'm like, no, this is not what's happening, and we're not romantic. So he actually ended up kind of agreeing with me on that. But his shift ended, and I started to realize that my patient rights were being abused. First of all, voluntary is supposed to be 72 hours. And the ER is just supposed to be there to stabilize you until they can get you into a facility. They did not have any estimated time on when I would be leaving the hospital to go to my 72 hours, which is a violation of Virginia law. It's a violation of my rights. They did not properly administer me medication and had no concern over it. Keep in mind that this hospital visit, there was no reason not to give me any of my meds, considering there was no overdose of my meds. So they failed to do that. They did let me use the phone plenty, the hospital phone plenty, which is very nice. I was able to talk to my dad and everything on it. They left the door open and the lights on all night, and I had to sleep there. Very uncomfortable. But they did leave the lights off in the room. Let's see, what else did they do? They kind of did this voluntary thing. Like they said, basically they wanted me to stay there for as long as possible, and were giving me no updates, lack of updates, and transparency on when I was going to get out, where I was going to be transferred to, and that the 72-hour process didn't even start. And finally, they did not allow me to clarify what I meant on the phone. I did not say I was forming a suicide pact. I said that I was planning on going to the end, or our plans were to go to the end and reach Katahdin, the end of the trail, travel together and reach the end of the trail together. That's what I said. And I said this to the psychiatrist there, working there. But she still recommended that I go to the ward because I was suicidal, even though I was not suicidal at the time. So that was, a very, it was a false admission. I should have never actually gone to the ward because the panic attack was over. I was not suicidal or homicidal. They actually admitted me for being homicidal for that comment. Suicidal and homicidal. Wrong. I never said that. And for some reason, one of the doctors thought Katahdin was like Nirvana or something. So he was convinced like I was planning on dying with this girl or whatever and going to Nirvana. I don't know. But basically, I talked to the psychiatrist there, and my input did not matter in any way. I gave on the screeners that I was not suicidal, actively suicidal. So I think that's also a violation of my rights because you're only I'm only to be I'm only to be admitted based on the idea that I'm a active threat to myself. And I was not an active threat to myself. Um, so yeah, there were a bunch of my rights violated. Basically, they just kept me there, and the 72 hours wasn't starting, and there was no therapist, there was no psychiatrist, there was nobody that I could talk to. I wasn't able to. There was no TV. I wasn't able to use my phone. So it was a very traumatic experience for me. Is that on any of the thru hikers? No, it's not. It's not on them. So I'm not going to blame anybody for that because it's just, you can't do that. It's not fair to them. So, no. So, I want to finish up. That's what happened. My dad eventually got them to let me go after threatening legal action. And they let me go. I think they were also violating the law because like I was involuntarily brought off the mountain by SAR, search and rescue, but I wasn't allowed to leave the hospital and was considered voluntary. So, and I think they were also only allowed to keep me for like 8 hours, and they kept me for 14 to, I was in that room for 14 to 16 hours with nothing to do and with poor sleep and with no medication administered. It took me like an hour to get my oral estradiol in the morning, and I had to ask for it. They didn't actually like give it to me. I had to ask for it repeatedly. So I feel like I was violated in a lot of ways. So that's what happened. That is the entire sequence of what happened. So I want to finish this video by saying I am incredibly sorry to the girl that I hurt. I am incredibly sorry that you were terrified of me. I would do anything to go back and for this not to happen. I will say you can go on the trail. I'm not on there anymore because I heard you were getting off of it. I'm not on the trail anymore. I partially quit the trail so that you could come back on. So you didn't have to worry about running into me. I did that sacrifice for you. I'm serious. I'm not smiling. I'm not blinking. I decided to come off the trail partially for you. So you can go back on and you can have the best time. And I hope with every bone in my body that you reach Katahdin. You know how I did 24 and a half miles and made up for some of my 0 days at the ward? It's because your family member, I asked her for strength, for resilience, to get me as far as I could. And she did that. I had never had a pace like that before. I asked her to give me the strength. I asked her from above the stars. I asked her to give me the resilience. And she did. She gave me that. I was able to go 24 and a half miles that day. 9,200 feet of elevation. So she's there. You could talk to her. She's still there. She gave me that. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really tired, so I can't cry, but I'm like borderline crying. She's there. And she gave me the strength to go what I did. I wish the best for her. We're both agnostic, but wherever she is, I wish the best for her. I hope that you're able to get your mind off of this. If you do go back on the trail, I hope you reach Catan. I hope that you and your fiance meet and get married and, have the happiest life. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to reach out to me. I don't expect you to. I just want to say that I'm sorry. From the bottom of my heart. I'm not on trail anymore, so you can go back. I'm not going to be on trail. So that's what I have to say to her. To the other thru hikers, I'm not going to blame you. No, I'm not going to blame you. You're sitting around. It's boring. You didn't have any idea that this was going to happen. You didn't have any idea, It's normal human psychology. You do it subconsciously, Tell dramatic stories. Tell only bits of information. I don't expect you to recall all that. None of you are at fault for anything. None of you. That's what I want you all to know.